have a small group today? Okay?
Yeah.
Still coming. Okay, everyone. Boker Tov. Boker Tov, everyone. Normally I wouldn't even mention this, but today's shir we have to mention the fact that according to some people, a new year began last night, and because of that, I'm mentioning that because that has to do with the topic of our shir today, which is using non-Jewish dates and calendars. That's what I want to talk about today. Obviously, connected to the fact that, according to some people, something happened last night and today, and something new began. Now, I have to admit before we start the shir that I was born here, I was brought up here, and I never really pay attention to dates that appear in the Loazi, what they call Loazi calendar. I really don't know. As a kid growing up, if I even knew there was such a thing called New Year's and what they did. I know it sounds funny, but yes?
I was just going to comment. I was born in the United States, and among most of my friends, etc., they don't even know the Hebrew verse.
Oh, okay, that's the opposite.
I do.
Right.
Right.
That's funny. Okay, that is interesting. So, I mean, just recently. I mean, I say recently. I mean, I don't remember growing up even knowing. If someone would have asked me when I was a child growing up, when's Christmas, or when I wouldn't even know what that means, or even though I do live outside Beit Lechem. But I never. My joke. My thing was when I was I tell people, how many people do you know? How many rabbis do you know that went the night of Christmas to the church in Nativity? So I said, they looked at me like, you're crazy. I said, well, I was in Miluim, outside in the Jeep, but still, that was my experience of that, and I find that many there's a big difference when we talk about this topic between people that were brought up in Chutz La'aretz and in a very natural way use the dates. To Israelis, again, when I say Israelis, I mean probably more the religious community more than just Israelis, who are not familiar and even get confused if December is before November or after October, and don't really live by those dates so much, even though in today's world it's almost impossible not to. You don't have to be even a businessman, but almost anyone today that lives in today's world it has to be aware to some level about the dates. And I want to ask, I really want to challenge ourselves. Why isn't this a big thing? Why isn't this a thing? Because I want to actually start by arguing that it should be a big thing. It really, I'm not looking for chumras. I'm not, I'm not on the program of chumrah of the week, on the radio show. But I am interested because it looks from a totally objective way, looking at this sugya. It looks like this is something that we should really have taken upon ourselves in a more serious way. So if we look at all the different things that Am Yisrael does and is aware of and is makpid about, I think that objectively this is something that should be out there. Why? That I'm not sure if we'll get even to halachic answer why. But I still want to challenge ourselves and at least think to be aware of this matter of using the calendar and the non-Jewish dates in our lives. And I want a small introduction. I don't remember if I gave this year here in the past few years, but next Shabbat, Parshat Shmot, there's a wonderful midrash on the parasha that I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's a well-known midrash about Am Yisrael keeping their identity. The midrash says, why were Am Yisrael redeemed from Egypt? In other words, what zchuyot did they have? What merits did they have? There was no Torah. But what the Gemara, I think what the midrash is really asking is, what makes Am Yisrael special and different before the Torah was given? And the midrash mentions that Am Yisrael kept a few things. What do we keep? Our names, our clothing, our language. There's the different midrashim with different ideas. Some say we didn't speak Lashon Hara. we kept our Jewish names, we kept our Jewish clothes. I always like to point out that Moshe Rabbeinu striked out on all of those. Because Moshe Rabbeinu, his real name was Moses, which is an Egyptian name. Right? It doesn't make sense that the daughter of Paro would know Hebrew so well to call him Moshe. How many of us would know to call a kid taken out of the water Moshe? How many of us know that verb? They say that an Egyptian woman knew that. So the Mefarshim say that she called him Moses, which is a Egyptian word. Moshe's name was Egyptian. And Moshe wore clothes of Egyptians because we know when the daughters of Yitro saw him, they said Ish Mitzri Tzilanu. And it says there in the Mefarshim because he spoke Egyptian, he dressed Egyptian, he looked Egyptian, he must have been Egyptian. Right? So Moshe Rabbeinu, of all the things that Chazal talk about, and by the way, Moshe Rabbeinu also spoke Lashon Hara about Am Yisrael. Remember? He puts his hand in, he says, he becomes leopard. So every strike is against Moshe here for not being an Israelite, or not being a Hebrew man, which I think is a very important perush, but that's not our topic right now. What I'm trying to say is that the Midrash recognizes something very important. I think this Midrash is way more important than just mentioning it, because this Midrash is actually arguing that besides mitzvot, besides Matan Torah, we have certain culture, habits, traditions that identify us as a people, as a nation, as a culture, that are not necessarily mitzvot. And it tells us these things are important. Don't mizalzel. There's a certain trend that people say, oh, well, it's not a Torah, halacha, a mitzvah, then it's shtuyot. That's not true. Symbols are very important. They have their hierarchy. They mean something. I think that's what the Midrash is telling us. Even before Matan Torah, we kept our Jewish names. We kept our Jewish pride. That is something significant, almost parallel to Torah mitzvot. Because the Midrash says, we don't have Torah mitzvot, so why should we be redeemed? The answer is because we have other things that may be very important, maybe as important. Yes?
When you think about the subject of dress, though, even today, among the Jewish community, there's a wide range, and the charet, nachon, and this is minhag. But when you think about the dress of the Haredim or other Orthodox, that's not necessarily Jewish dress. So what is Jewish dress?
That's a fascinating question.
Maybe it's better described by sneived.
Okay, so that, by the way, that is an excellent question, which I will, if we have time, I don't think we will. I would love to go down that path of that question. Right. No. But I would like to, because I'll give you another example. Because if we do have time today, I want to talk about Jewish names, for example. Again, in Chutz La'aretz, it's much more common to call your kid, I don't know, Henry, Harry, Frank. While in Israel, it's not. It's not so common. And then you can ask yourself, wait a second, if you call your kid, I don't know, the newest, Oniyah, I don't know what they're calling the kid today. I don't know. They're out of words today. Gal, Yam, who knows what. Does that make you a Jewish name? Because it's Hebrew? I mean, people call their kids Guy, which I never got that. Like, if you go to America and say, hi, my name is Guy, I'm a whatever. So Guy is a Hebrew word. Is that a Hebrew name? Is that an Israeli name? Is that a Jewish name? The famous Alexander. Is Alexander a Jewish name? What do you think? Well, it's, some people say, what are you talking about? It's a very Jewish name, right? It's a very Jewish name, and it was the Jewish people call people Alexander. What about Papa? Rav Papa in the Gemara, or Ravina, Rav Ashi, Rav Zvid, Rav Zera, Rav Huna, Abaye. Is Abaye a Jewish name? I mean, by the way, is Shendel and Asher Zelig, is Zelig a Jewish name because it's Yiddish? Meaning, so the answer might be, I think, I see where I'm going with this? What I'm trying to say is that it could very well be that we're not so, it doesn't make so much of a difference where the origin is from, but rather how it's seen and perceived in today's society. So it could be that you're 100% right that a shtreimel or a kapota is not a Jewish, is not original Jewish, even though Levi genes is, made by a Jew. But you understand where I'm going with this. So that's a good question. I don't have a definite answer. I agree with you. And for sure there's some element of subjectivity of how we perceive it, how we see it. If you ask the Haredi world, they'll say we don't care where it came from. The bottom line is, if today you walk around with a white shirt, black pants, a black suit, and a scarf in the winter, very important, then you are associated as a Jew, right? Everyone, or Amish, I mean, whatever. So meaning there is something to dress code which just changed. Obviously, it changes. But the fact is that you and I both can recognize a Haredi a mile away. So that would actually justify as if that their argument that is a Jewish clothes. But like I said, let's stick with this, and then maybe we'll go back to that too. What is the using we said before, Jewish clothes and Jewish names, are they halachic? Do they have halachic source to them? So one might argue that this is to do with Chokos HaGoyim. Chokos HaGoyim, as I remember as a kid growing up in Israel, I had a Haredi Rebbe in high school, and he loved to always, whenever we challenged him about something, he would answer Chokos HaGoyim. We always felt that was like a way of saying to us, shut up, Chokos HaGoyim. If he wanted kids to get haircuts. If he told us off to get a haircut, so we said, well, what do you care that we have long hair? I mean, I never have long hair, you can see. But so you can say, oh, Chokos HaGoyim, right? Right. So well, Yachinami, Shimshon did marry a non-Jewish woman. But anyway, going back a second to this. So Chokos HaGoyim is not my topic today. But Chokos HaGoyim is a law in the Torah, which is argued and disputed about what exactly it includes, what it entails, how far can we use this rule of Chokos HaGoyim. But at least I can argue that perhaps there is a halachic, you could argue that there's a halachic reason why you're supposed to keep your tradition. Is the calendar the same? I want to argue that the calendar is even more serious than Chokos HaGoyim. Meaning, you could argue, like clothes and names, that Chokos HaGoyim is the reason why we should have our own calendar. But what's incredible is that it seems a pasuk mefurash b'Torah, and in fact, the first mitzvah given to us. If you look in front of you, we all know the first pasuk in the Torah that is our first mitzvah. HaChodesh hazeh lachem rosh chodashim rishonu lachem lechodshei hashana. Now, if I were to ask many people, what is the first mitzvah that we were given as a Jewish people? What would people answer? People say to me, Puruvu. Okay, Puruvu was the first mitzvah mentioned in the Torah. But the first mitzvah we were given as a people. Remember the first Rashi and Chumash. Rashi said the Torah should have started from this pasuk. This should be the first pasuk. Rashi is assuming that the Chumash is a book of law. If it's a book of law, it should start with the first law, and the first law, not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave people, but rather that He gave to Am Yisrael. And why is that? Because our belief, this is a famous Rambam. The Rambam writes this down in Pirush HaMishnayos of his to Masechet Chulin. I don't remember which chapter. The Rambam writes down the mitzvot only obligate us when they were given to us as a people at Har Sinai. Any mitzvah before Har Sinai, says the Rambam, does not obligate the Jewish people. And if we want Puruvu, Brit Milah, all those mitzvot to obligate us, they had to be repeated and given again at Har Sinai. Which therefore means that the first mitzvah that really obligates us, that was given to us as a people, is this mitzvah. Now what is this mitzvah? Most people would say to me, the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh. Kiddush HaChodesh. Correct? Kiddush HaChodesh. But is that really what it says here? So I'm saying that's what people would tell me. Declaring the first month, seeing the month, and based upon the month, we would announce it's Rosh Chodesh. But is that what the pasuk is actually telling us? This is your first month. And look at Rashi. So Rashi starts by saying, Hirau levana b'chidusha. Dosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe the Yareach, the moon. Ve'amar lo kshe'areach mitchadesh, yeh lecha Rosh Chodesh. But then Rashi adds, Ve'ein mikra yotzei midei pshuto. What does that mean? That what Rashi said a second ago, that's the halacha that we learn, Kiddush HaChodesh. But Rashi says, but ein mikra yotzei midei pshuto. The pshat of the pasuk is that God is commanding us, this is the first month of the year. In other words, what is the real mitzvah? Making a Jewish calendar. The first mitzvah, the pshat of the first mitzvah is, God is telling us, I want you to call Nisan the first month. Why? Why is that the first mitzvah that we're given? Rav Soloveitchik talks about this. Why of all mitzvot is the first mitzvah Kiddush HaChodesh, and the Rav talks about Mekadesh Zezman, that slaves have no, they don't even have their own time. They don't own their own time. And this is a part of educational process of teaching people about freedom, about being responsible for your own time, etc. Beautiful. But
what's the month of Gula?
So what? So the answer of what I'm asking here is very simple.
You also said Nisan is the first month, and in fact, I'm sure you'll get to it. I didn't look ahead, but the months don't even necessarily have Hebrew names.
Yeah, as you said,
So
we'll get there.
I'll be quiet.
As you said, okay. So the Torah is teaching us here that basically the first mitzvah really is to create a Jewish calendar. Going back to what I said before, to understand that identity as a people, as a nation, people have a currency and a language, and that gives zehut, that gives identity. Having their own calendar, but here it's more than that. Why is it important to make a calendar? Because let's go to the calendar that the Goyish world has today, that the Christian world has today. What do they count to? The birth of Jesus. As you know, Jesus apparently was born on the 24th. His bris was on the 1st of January, and 9 months earlier was April Fool's. So the idea of a calendar is very simple. The idea of a calendar is that every time we mention a date, we are recognizing, in this case, the birth of Jesus. Right? That is the reason behind Lahavdil. There's Baruch who's telling us, I want you to create a calendar. And every time you mention a date, you will go back to Yitzhak Mitzrayim. Rishonu l'chodshei hashana. This is the first month. This is the first month of the year. And every time you count, what are you counting to? You're counting to Yitzhak Mitzrayim. Now, this I'll prove to you that this is the basis of all the dates that we have. And the best example is the days of the week. This is a famous Ramban, and by the way, the Ritva on the bottom of the page here brings this idea. You can see it inside. How do Jews name the days of the week? Very, 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 unique, original. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, why do we do it? So Rav Meidan has a wonderful article about this, and he says, first of all, it's very practical. When you want to count between Rishon leChamishi, you write, no, it's 4 days. And he says that's also why the Torah is giving us numbers for months, because it's the easiest thing is 5 months from now, the Chodesh HaRishon, the Chodesh HaChamishi. If you want to subtract, want to add, it's easy. Sometimes, but if you have like January, February, March, April, right? People take out their fingers. But if you numbers is much easier, fine. But the Ramban, the Ritva, why do we call the days of the week Rishon, Shini, Shlishi? Because what? Because we're counting towards Shabbat. And what are we mikayim by doing that? Zachor et Yom HaShabbat L'Kadesho. We sing Shir Shayom. Hayom Yom Rishon B'Shabbat. Hayom Sheni B'Shabbat. Every day that we say Shir Shayom, every day we say the days of the week, we are counting towards Shabbat. We are counting towards, meaning what we're in other words, we're saying is the center of our week is Shabbat. And every time we mention, I'm going to play with my friend today, Yom Shlishi. So we recognize, we mention. It's almost like saying, B'ezrat Hashem, Tzat Yishma. I mean, the fact that we always bring this into our the vocabulary is because we want to mention Shabbat. We are counting to Shabbat. And the same goes for the months of the year. Because Baruch was telling us, Yitziat Mitzrayim is an important idea. And we know that. Because half of our mitzvot are about Yetziat Mitzrayim. We put on tefillin. We have mezuzah. We have Shabbat. We have all the Chagim. We have Kriyat Shema. Everything is, and we have, of course, a mitzvah twice a day of remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim. Remembering Yetziat Mitzrayim, pumping into our brains, into our toda'ah. How do you say toda'ah in English? In our, what? Consciousness, okay? This message, again and again and again, that we were Egypt. We were slaves in Egypt, we were slaves in Egypt. And God took us out of Egypt. This is a pattern and a theme throughout halakha, throughout our traditions. And the first mitzvah, and it makes sense, the first mitzvah that we were given in Mitzrayim is basically a mitzvah of Zichirat Yetziat Mitzrayim. And that seems to be a mitzvah in a halacha. The Ramban, in front of you, asks the question that the gentleman just asked. Wait a second, if that's really true, then we know in today's world, today the date is Yudalit, today's Yud Gimel. Yud Gimel Tevet, today's Yud Gimel Yud Bet. Asar Tevet was Tuesday, so Yud Aleph Yud Bet. Yud Aleph was Wednesday, and today's Yud Bet. Sorry, Yud Bet, today's Yud Bet Tevet. So very firm people say in Hebrew days Yud Bet Tevet. And Hakadosh Baruch Hu said, what's the date really today? What's the date according to Hakadosh Baruch Hu? Today is really... Today is... Oh. Anyone work here? I don't know.
Hey, don't use all the dirty words.
I read the previous reference.
12th.
Okay, today, that's the Hebrew date. Today, that's the Hebrew date. Okay, today the 12th of the 10th.
Unless you're American, which makes it be 10 and 12.
Okay, no, but if you're Jewish, according to the Torah, you should write today the 12th of the 10th. And yet many people today will write Tevet. The Ramban says, how did that happen? How did that happen that we call our month names when the Torah tells us not to do that? The Torah tells us numbers. So the Ramban says it's an amazing idea. I don't know if I should accept it, but it is an amazing idea. The Ramban says, the second line, והסיבה כי מתחילה היה מניינם זכר ליציאת מצרים. Third line, אבל כאשר עלינו מבבל ונתקיים מה שאמר הכתוב ולא יאמר עוד חי השם אשר העלה בני ישראל מארץ מצרים כי אם חי השם ואשר הביא בני ישראל מארץ צפון, חזרנו לקרוא החודשים בשם שנקראים בבבל. There's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu. Yirmiyahu says that in the future, when there'll be Yitziat, not Mitzrayim, Yitziat Bavel, it will be such an amazing event, similar to Yitziat Mitzrayim, that you will not mention, you will forget as if Yitziat Mitzrayim, and you will talk about Yitziat Bavel. Says the Ramban, the months that we use today are all Babylonian. So when we today say Yud Bet Tevet, what are we remembering? Yitziat Bavel. In other words, what should we do today if we're really Zionists? How should we write the dates of today? To Chodesh Iyar, to the state of Israel. My parents, I looked at my parents' invitation to their wedding. They got married in 1967. My parents' invitation said on it, 19 years to the establishment of the state of Israel. People did that. People used to do that, by the way. They don't do that today anymore. They used to do that. Now, what? I don't know people that do that. Fine. If they do, they do. I haven't seen it. But if people do that, why do people do that? Why mention? Again, because counting to a date shows that date is important in your life. That's a beginning point that you're counting from. And the Ramban explains that Yachinami, the Torah is not necessarily telling you, Daf Yitzat Mitzrayim, but telling you rather that you have to count to the event that really has significance in your life. And the Navi says, it's a pasuk in Yirmiyahu that says that in the future we'll remember the Geulah of Bavel more than we will remember the Geulah of Mitzrayim. So the Ramban says that's what we do. Yeah.
Wasn't that such a failure, though?
I agree. That's why, for other reasons too. I think it's a very original Ramban. I agree with you. It's a very original Ramban. You have to give him credit. It's quite, brilliant. I don't know if that's really convincing, though. I think, and it could very well be that, like many things, just like we have a source that says you should call your kids Jewish names, but throughout the generations, people started calling their kids Morris and Frank and Sam, or Sam Shmuel, and then this is part of losing traditions or assimilation, not in the sense of marrying out, but like adapting. So this is something that people, again, you can also explain that this is what happened. People started losing, they didn't see the importance or whatever it is. The Ritva, by the way, he also asks this question. Look in the bottom of the Ritva. He says, V'im Tomar, the last line. He, like the Ramban, answers a similar idea. He says, V'im Tomar, much the last line at the bottom. Harim Matzinu Shemot Chadashim B'Torat Yerech HaEitanim. In Melachim, it's referring, Yerach is a month, Eitanim is what month? Anyone know? In Tanakh? Tishrei. Yerach HaEitanim in Tanakh is Tishrei. So again, or Chodesh Ziv. Chodesh Ziv is? I think it's Nisan. Is it Iyar? Okay. I'm not sure. I thought it was Iyar, Nisan, but maybe. V'yesh Lomar. Oh, so again, the Tanakh itself. The Tanakh itself doesn't refer to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us to do. So the answer is V'yesh Lomar Da'anu Enam Shem Etzem Ela Shem Toar. They're not the name that we actually use, but a description of the month. It's like a nickname of describing the month rather than the name itself. It's not the Shem Etzem, but rather a Toar. It's a description. It's an adjective, and not the Shem Etzem. How do you say Shem Etzem in English? A noun. Okay. For example, Yerech HaEitanim, it's a Shnoldu Bo Itanei Olam. The Avraham Avinu, apparently Itanei Olam, the strong people were born then. Chodesh Ziv. Again, he explains different explanations why Dafka the word Ziv and what it means and why it's describing that month. But really, that wasn't the name of the month. So you see that both the Ramban and Rizch Chachmei Sfarad are trying to find explanations to the minhag of changing the original plan of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's commandment to keep a calendar. And like I said, either there is a real rationale behind this, as the Ramban suggests, or possibly just it happened as time went by and people stopped caring about this and making a big thing. And to be fair, it's very difficult to live in a world where everyone's using one date and you're using a different date. It's very, very difficult. I've told you that Rav Meidan, who I mentioned before, has a whole article about this. And he's very, very adamant or very kind of passionate about this idea. I have one or two books in my house that he wrote to my father, a dedication, and the dates are unrecognizable because he writes dates like this. He'll write today. If he writes a date today, he will write the 12th of the 10th, and then the year will be something like 346, something like that. I don't remember exactly, because he drops the right. What today the Hebrew date is Ha-Tash-Pu, right? Yeah. But we drop the Hey, which is 5,000, and we just say Tashin Peva, correct? Yeah. So he also dropped, I think, from Yetziat Mitzrayim. I think he drops the 3, something like that. But he actually writes the dates in a way that you can't understand what it is. I love to show it to people. They get very confused of what this date is and what it means, and he's really like one of the only people in the world probably that has his own calendar, which is hard to make dates with him. But I give him credit that he's very Mekori, very original and very passionate about this idea. But my question is, really, this is a mitzvah of the Torah. It's the first mitzvah we're given. And not only do we not keep it, we actually go against it. That's my argument. And I'll explain to you why. Because if I write now a check, this generation in front of me knows what to check it. I have to explain to my students what to check it. But when we write a check, okay, and I want to write a date for today, and I write the 1st of the 1st, 2026. So I'm calling today this date. Mm-hmm. What am I doing is I'm going against the Torah though. It's not that it's an alternative date. Because Rosh Baruch Hu told us that this is Aleph Nisan. Rosh Baruch Hu said numbers of dates are referring to the month HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem. This is the first month. And what am I saying now? Rosh Baruch Hu, sorry, no, that's not the first month. The first month is January. So it's not that I'm creating an alternative calendar. By doing this, I'm mamash going against the first mitzvah we were given in the Torah. Now, it is quite astonishing. I think. By the way, I don't have a good explanation to this, but it's quite astonishing that for some reason this mitzvah doesn't have a lot of luck. Didn't have luck. I remember once Rav Shechter once gave a shir somewhere, and someone asked him a question about something, and his answer was, "Not all mitzvot have luck."
But we were taught to write out instead of doing that. At least I was taught to write out the name.
So we'll see tshuvot about that. Some agree, some disagree with what you just said. Now we'll get that the machlokes, the modern posting, if that's true or not. But what I'm suggesting right now, and I admit that I don't have a wonderful explanation of explaining rationally why we do this.
I can suggest something.
Bakasha.
It's Chodesh Lachem for you. You have to deal with the rest of the world. You go to the rest of the world, do you speak Hebrew to the rest of the world, or do you speak in their language?
So fine, so that means that when we talk to ourselves and to each other, we should only use Hebrew dates. Do we do that?
I jokingly, I made a suggestion in shul that we not say Tabory today, and I was given a very strange look.
Yeah, but
even if it was, they knew it was a joke.
But I'm saying that's not the case. Look, listen, I remember Rav Druckman. I learned in Or Tzion by Rav Druckman many years ago. And Rav Chaim Druckman once gave over a story. I have to look for the source of the story. He told us a story about a chayal, I think, who was killed, who, when he was drafted somewhere in the 60s, he received an official letter from the Israeli army to be drafted, and he was very annoyed because the date was a non-Jewish date. And this kid wrote back, "We haven't waited 2,000 years and built a Jewish state for me to be called up to the Israeli army on a non-Jewish date." And the army responded to him, you're right, and they sent him a Jewish date on the day of draft. And I don't know if because of that, but what I do know is that at some point they passed a law. There's a law in the country that both have to be on official papers. Both dates have to be, and you are allowed on a check to write the Hebrew date, which is so annoying for the bankers.
I write all my checks on Hebrew.
And which I always say is that's why you should do it, just to get them annoyed. It makes my day when they see them like, "Oh, what is this? What is that?" They have to look up. But by the way, you should know that it's so bad sometimes. There's an urban legend, which I think is not urban, I think it's a true story, that at the time when what's his name? When Ariel Sharon did the Girush from Gush Katif, that they went by the non-Jewish calendar. They made up a date, and only a few days later, someone noticed that it was Tisha B'Av, which was appropriate, but that wasn't his plan. He realized, oh my God, how does that look? And it was bad for him. But I'm saying, people sometimes they make flights. And then they realize, oh my gosh, it's like a fast day, or it's the Yom Tov Sheni. I've had questions about people who say, oh my God, we didn't realize it's Yom Tov Sheni and we're flying, and whatever. People sometimes make now it's all the money to cancel the flight, and we didn't realize, and it's this and it's that, because even from people don't take the Hebrew date so seriously, because we're living in a world where that's not what people do. And what I'm trying to suggest, look, I'm not making a revolution here, and I'm not judging, and I'm not, I'm just questioning out loud with you, how did this happen that the first mitzvah that we were given, that has a lot of, like I said, it's not from nowhere. The yesod, the principle of this mitzvah is based upon half of our mitzvot, which is Lizkor Yitzhak Mitzrayim. Not only are we not doing it, it seems that we are going against it. And now I'll add the cherry to the cake in the negative way, which is not only are we going against the Torah, we are actually doing the Christian thing. Meaning, the original idea of the Torah was for us to, every time we write a date on a check, or that we make up a date with our friends, we mikayim lizkor Yitzhak Mitzrayim. Not only are we not doing that, but we're actually saying, let's meet on a date that certain years ago Jesus was born. So even if we want to argue, I'll get to that. Even if we want to argue that somehow it's a mitzvah that we're not fulfilling, it seems that it might be halachically problematic because it may be avodah zarah. Now, this is not my topic, but I'm sure we all know that the default attitude of all poskim, including modern poskim, is that Christianity as a religion, not necessarily as a people today, but as a religion, might be considered avodah zarah. That's a default psak. There's no rabbi that I know of that says you can walk into a church. I've searched, I've asked, I've challenged. There is no Orthodox rabbi that I know of that gives a heter unless it's a very Rabbi Sachs at the time went into the chuppah of William and Kate. He was a entire Kedushin there, so there's a heter. When Rabbi Luxstein went to Obama's inauguration in America, it was in in the cathedral in Washington. Wow, did the rabbis give it to him? He was attacked by the Orthodox rabbis. They're going to a cathedral, and he said, "What do you want from me?" Rabbi Sachs goes in England, and they said that America is different. I don't know, whatever. But the default is that as a religion, we don't today, meaning we today do not, our relationships with Christians is not of avodah zarah. But as a religion, we still see a New Testament, a church, the worship symbols. They are problematic. And what's more problematic of every time you make a date, you are basically playing with their message, which is L'man tizkor et yom holedet Yeshu. That's what you're doing. So not only are we not fulfilling the Torah's mitzvah, it almost seems that we're playing with avodah zarah. And the Maharam Shik in front of you, from 18th century, a student, I think Rebbe of the Chatam Sofer, a student of the Chatam, somewhere about the Chatam Sofer era. By the way, his name was Maharam Shik. You know what Shik stands for? Shem Yehudi Kadosh. He had this thing that he was adamant that Jews should keep their Jewish names. And he has a tshuva about this. But here he says, Zu avera kfula umechupelet, to use a non-Jewish calendar. The mispar chodeshim shlem enam mechuvanim lemispar bnei Yisrael. They're not the same, that's what we said before, they're not the same numbers. Uma she'isaymu b'mispar hashim mispar hanotzri. The fact, again, they use other numbers, that's one problem. But the fact that they use numbers that counts to the Christian date, lida'ati ze isur de'oraita. Why? Because it says in the Torah, B'Shem Elohim Achirim lo tazkiru. Shem Elohim Achirim lo tazkiru. You should not say other gods' names and other worships and religions' names, place of worship. You shouldn't mention their names. And he, Mamash, came out against this very, very severely. Like I said, there are so many reasons why using the non-Jewish state would be problematic. So I said, until now, I mentioned all the reasons why it's problematic, and I'll quote now two poskim of the 20th century who were lenient about this. It'll cost you money though. It's Rav Avadia and the Tzitz Eliezer. They both basically Mazel Tov. They both gave a heter. They were both lenient about this for a few reasons. But what is fascinating, we'll soon see, is they disagreed what the heter should be. They agree that you could, in certain circumstances, use the non-Jewish date, but their conclusion is a little different, and I will soon see. Aviad asks a question in front of you. You can see in page 2. נשאלתי אודות הכותבים איגרות ומכתבים לחבריהם. If you write a letter and they write לבניין הנוצרים, אם יש למחות בידיהם, his problem is ובחוקותיהם לא תלכו, just adding another ether on all what we said until now. But look how many problems there are, or at least possible problems there are with using a non-Jewish date. His answer is בטרם אתחיל, he says, first of all, what someone just yelled out, it's not so clear that it's actually the date of Jesus' birth. 2025, 26 years ago, we know today wasn't exactly Jesus' birth. And he brings here, one second, he brings here a whole discussion about this. If you go like 6 lines bottom, 8, 9, he says, נמצא שהרבה שנים לפני תחילת מספרם כבר מת ישו. That Jesus was dead maybe 4 years, they say today. They really, if you want to, it's really 2020, it's 30 right now, according to the real historical events of Jesus. But I'll be honest, and therefore, if you say 2026, you're not really going back to the. I'm sorry, I don't buy this. I don't buy this at all. So what? Everyone knows what your intention is, what you mean. It doesn't. If we're off a day, tell me. And what will happen if we find out that the world was created a day later or a day before? It's a principle, right? When you say the date, you are saying it for a certain reason. Everyone knows what you mean, what you say. I don't buy this as a reason.
We say it could be for convention. We don't say
that might be different. That might be a different answer. Okay, we'll get there. But what I'm saying, this answer to me, it's not a very strong answer. It's just it's almost like it's a shtick. I mean, it's oh wow, their day off. So it's not. Come on, that's not real. Sorry.
4 months was.
Okay, but whatever. I'm saying, but it's still the meaning. Then he goes on and says, and here he brings a very famous. In the next page, you'll see he quotes. He says, what you just said now on the top of the page, "Matani avon navo inu dati, כי נראה שאם כותבי התאריך לועזי אינם חושבים בכוונת מכוונת, רק שלפי שכן נוהגים העולם הבקיאים, אין בזה, I'm on page number 3, on bet, on paragraph bet, he says, intention is important. Intention is important. We don't have the intention. Sorry. Again, I disagree with that. Well, what do you mean you have that? And if you walk into a church, you say, I'm walking into a church, I don't have any intention to worship Avodah Zarah. We still say you shouldn't walk into a church. Let's remember something very, very simple. Right? Even if we find it very hard sometimes to associate Avodah Zarah with Christianity per se, at the end of the day, there are elements of Avodah Zarah, and Avodah Zarah is the most chamur thing in the Torah. There's nothing that comes close to Avodah Zarah. And in all our traditions, that is something that we stay the furthest away from. Lo bichdi. So we're always machmir about Avodah Zarah. So when we say no intention, well, since when do we care about intention? I mean, we care, but surely that's not enough, to me at least, to say that it's not a reason to be making. One of his last things, a few more, in the middle of the page, I highlighted it, is the Maharik that he quotes, the Maharik Kolon, the Maharik, who's brought down by the Bet Yosef, and is quoted by the Ramah in Shulchan Aruch. This Maharik is a very important Maharik. I think it's a profound idea, which is halachically very, very important, because the Maharik was one of the only Rishonim that really gave us a very clear definition of what Chukot HaGoyim means. if we want any kind of definition or clarity of what is included in the Torah's law, not to go in the ways of the goyim, the Marik says it has to be two conditions, either or, for us to make it asur. He says either it's something of pritzut, meaning it's something wrong, immoral, immodest in this tradition of the goyim, or he said it has to do with there's no reason of benefit. There's no benefit from why we're doing it. If one of those reasons is true, you can't do it. But if there's nothing immodest in it, and you are doing it because you are doing it for a reason, you're benefiting from this, then it's not chokot goy. So, for example, one could argue, for example, I'm dressing right now like a goy. I don't know. My clothes don't define me more as a Jew or as a goy. And so why is it allowed? Because it's not immodest the way I'm dressed. By the way, modesty doesn't mean tzniut, I think, in the sense of like, my shirt is, it means gasut. It means something immoral. It's not just, and B, I benefit. I want to look nice. I want to look cool. I want to look, I don't know, whatever it is, right? So, by the way, the Ma'arik Tshuva originally was written about a doctor who wanted to wear a doctor's lab coat. And he asked the Maharik, the question was, can a Jewish doctor wear a cape? It was a cape at the time. That's kappa. That was the word in the Maharik. Can he wear a cape? Which distinguished him as a doctor. I mean, we all probably know more than they did at the time, being a doctor. But and the answer was yes. Why? Because there's a benefit from you wearing that cape. The uniform of a doctor is beneficial. So you're allowed to do it. So here we can go on to a whole discussion, which I don't want to go into right now, of chokot hagoyim. What does that include? What's the benefit? And by the way, this Maharik, right down by the Ramah, is the opinion that was accepted in Jewish psak, the default psak, which therefore, anytime we had a benefit from it, so they allowed it. I'll tell you where in Israel this was a sensitive issue. This question, by the way, the Gra disagrees. The Gra disagrees with the Maharik. The Gra is very machmir. But funerals for Israeli soldiers has been a very sensitive matter. Many people have claimed that adopting the traditions of other armies in the world, of shooting in the air, of putting wreaths of flowers on the graves, those are goyish minhagim, especially when we have our own minhagim. Going back to what we said before about the calendar, it's not only that we are adopting new minhagim, that we're as if replacing our Jewish minhagim with other minhagim, and the ones that argued against said, well, this is there's a benefit. It's a sign of respect to the chayal that we give him such a funeral, and there's a benefit involved. So, as you can see, you can argue a lot, right? There's all room to argue, but Rav Avadia in this case argues that there's no intention, it's not the real date, and this is how the world works. You can't be a businessman today in the world and not refer to the Goyish date. And for all those reasons, he argues that it is okay. However, if you go to the next page, he says, page 4, in the middle of the page, he says, therefore, im yesh tzorech, it's highlighted, mischari v'chadome lichtivat tarikh loazi, if it's really a need for business to write the date, then you're allowed to. And he says, "V'lachen gam biger dechatam sofer." He quotes that Gedolei Yisrael used to write goyish dates on their letters. How can that be? He said, because they also realize that there's a benefit involved, and therefore it is a benefit. He says you're allowed to do it. What you shouldn't do, by the way, they say don't write on matzevas and ketubot and Jewish kind of traditions. They should refrain from doing that. But if it's for business, then you can. And then at the end of the page, though, look what he says at the bottom. יש להעיר להם שלא יקראו את החודש ינואר החודש הראשון או פברואר השני וכן בכתיבה אלא יש לבחור הרע במיעוטו שיקראום בשמותם המפורשים. He says, what's better? to call today, to write the 1st of the 1st, or to write the 1st of January? What's better, he said?
First of
Right,
January.
1st of January.
He said it's better to do this. Why? Because this is going against the Torah. We said before. You're saying that the 1st of the 1st is today. The Torah says no. This is the 1st of Nisan. He said at least this is a nickname. January. However, if you go to the next page, the Tzitz Eliezer, who says the exact opposite. He says better to write the numbers, but to write January, those are pagan. Some of them are pagan. July, June, Jupiter, whatever. These are Ovdei Kochavim Umazalot. Mamash Ovdei Kochavim Umazalot. These Mamash, the origins of some of the names of the months are pagan, are Avodah Zarah.
But what do we do with our names?
Which ones? Which ones?
Tishrei, Heshvan, Kislev.
So again, the Ramban will say those are Babylonian names that remind us of Yisad Bavel.
No.
Those Babel
That I don't
in
know.
Rome.
That I don't know. You know that?
I think, I don't know.
I don't know. So let's check that out. It's a good question. It could be. I don't know. I don't know. It could be. It could be.
You say January 1st of January, you just write numbers and you're in America or in Israel or Europe.
Which, by the way, could drive you mad, right? This is why do Americans have to be different when it comes to miles and to temperature and temperature, miles, but especially the date. It's so messed up. It's so messed up. There's no logic. It should be the small day, the bigger as it grows, right? The day, the month, the year. It makes sense. It makes sense.
Tabory, this did not start with Americans.
Oh, okay. All the Americans now are going to get all sensitive about this. Okay.
It started between England and France. If I remember correctly.
Yeah. Okay. It's that politics. Later. Anyway, going back.
Not able to be doing what we're doing right now.
Oh, Mitsuyan. So I think.
The whole point of it.
No.
Otherwise you
So
can
to
stay in
conclude,
California.
I will conclude this year by saying that I asked a lot of questions and I challenged, I think, us all. I don't have good answers, and I think that it's for some reason this is almost like not people. You know, certain rabbis have agendas. You know, there's the bug rabbi. You ever heard of the bug rabbi? Everything he has bugs. They know everything. Judaism is about bugs, and it starts and ends with bugs and whatever. So there was my father said when he was a young guy in YU. There was a guy who was known as the Shatnez guy. Like he before him there was no Shatnez, right? And then everything is Shatnez. Take your clothes off. Everything's Shatnez, right? So he made people aware of Shatnez, and that was his his juke, as we say in Hebrew. And he made people aware of Shatnez. And so there certain rabbis, certain people have in their minds certain kind of agendas of what they're going to push and change and make people do. Because as you all know, Shatnez was almost a forgotten halacha by many people. And Rabban Soloveitchik made Chadash into a thing, which is a Doraisa halacha Kodesh Rambam. But people did do it. And Rabban Soloveitchik brought it back. There are a few examples like this in Jewish history where certain halachas were not really forgotten, but not given attention and not given. I am not the date rabbi. I'm not coming to say this is the most important thing. I'm just challenging all of us. Why is it that we don't care enough about this? And because halacha seems to argue that there's a leniency when you need, but the default should be that we should use Jewish calendar dates. We should celebrate. We should celebrate our Jewish dates, even on the most simple level of birthdays. On the most simple. Again, I'm not having an agenda about this. I'm just asking. Why should a firm Jew recognize a non-Jewish date for his birthday? Why don't you go by the Chinese calendar too? Celebrate 3 birthdays. Go by the Islam. Soon that will happen in Europe. They're going to move to the Muslim calendar. But I'm saying there's a lot of calendars. There's no end to calendars. You can make up your own calendar right now. So if you have to do it, if you have to go by the non-Jewish calendar because that's the language that people understand, and you're doing a business deal or you're writing a check, whatever. Beseder. But within our Jewish communities, maybe there's room to us to rethink about this, to try to use more Jewish dates. And like I said, I gave a shir Davka today, which if you know why I gave it today, then that just shows that we have a problem. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So apparently only Tabory is named after a deity.
And I got